Topic for today is ancestor worship. Halloween and Day of the Dead are coming up. They are fun and events we love, but what do they mean? We've gotten lost in the costumes, haunted houses, and pumpkin carving. I thought it would be appropriate to talk about our ancestors and how worship plays a role in nearly every religion and culture around the world. Throughout human history, we've dealt with death by continuing to communicate with the ones we've lost through grief rituals, ancestral traditions, and worship. Ancestor worship is any religious practice based on a belief that spirits or souls of the deceased continue to exist and have an impact on the lives and luck of the living. I'm going to talk about some rituals from different cultures. I'm not going to talk about a made-for-Hollywood zombie apocalypse. My apologies for any mispronounced names. The first is Shraddha from India. In the Hindu religion, it's a ceremony of religious and social responsibility. All the males are required to take part in a rite for deceased parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents to protect, support, and nourish the spirits as they travel through the afterlife and on to reincarnation. The males offer nourishing rice balls to local priests and to the souls of the deceased. Services include feet washing and other acts of devotion. Feet washing is also part of the Native American ritual. In India, these rites take place on the 11th day and the 31st day after a person's death. Vodun from Ghana, West Africa, you might have heard, is known in the world as voodoo, but it's more than a Hollywood horror movie. It centers around a series of gods similar to the gods of ancient Greece. Human sacrifice to the gods ended over a century ago, but animal sacrifice still takes place. A key component to their ancestor worship is that the souls of the dead walk among the living at certain times. One of those times is during a dance performed annually by hooded figures called living ghosts, allowed to walk among the living for a little while. So the hooded figures represent the dead so well that touching them can even bring death to the living. That's definitely movie material. Dia de los Muertos is from Mexico. It's the Day of the Dead, a Latin American custom combining Aztec ritual with Catholicism brought by the Spaniards, the conquistadores. It's a 2-day festival of All Saints' Day, November 1st, celebrating children, and November 2nd, celebrating adults. The dead would be insulted by mourning or sadness, so the Day of the Dead celebrates the lives of the departed by the living making festive altars and using skulls and skeletons to portray the dead wearing fancy clothes, enjoying life with food, drink, and parties that they enjoyed while living. Offerings on the altar are water to quench the spirit's thirst and bread to feed the spirit on its journey through the afterlife. I recommend watching the full-length movie by Pixar, Coco. It has authentic Day of the Dead practices, villains, costumes, music, and symbols. It's a winner. The saints from Rome and Catholicism are the focus of ancestor worship, centering around honoring holy or virtuous people throughout history that the church identified as saints or martyrs. My favorites are Joan of Arc and Saint Francis of Assisi. The Shi ceremony of China is a Chinese folk religion tradition. A Shi is a ceremonial stand-in for a deceased ancestor. It's a corpse. At a funeral, a personator is an ancestor dressed up and acting on their behalf. For example, the Shi personator can eat and drink, consuming ritual offerings that relatives actually give to the departed. Large Shi gatherings often take place as a type of family reunion of many generations in the forms of their personators. At the ceremony, they eat and drink, as well as enjoy blessings from living family members. Megalithic tombs from Europe don't take place much anymore, but worshippers used to create giant burial tombs for the dead as a way to venerate the ancestors. The ancient Europeans also buried the newly departed alongside the long dead and to entomb valuable objects alongside the corpse. Many of the tombs were built to resemble houses. The people of that time imagined their ancestors living on after death in the same kinds of homes they lived in here. Pachumben from Cambodia is an Ancestors' Day, which is most important, and their annual ceremony in honor of ancestors going back seven generations. For 15 days each year, families offer food, which they bring to their local places of worship. Each family donates cooked rice to the Buddhist monks who chant all night long. The merit earned by making this donation to the monks is thought to transfer to the departed ancestors in the spirit world. Samhain from Scotland is the original pagan version of Halloween. This Celtic holiday was a festival when people would light bonfires and wear costumes to ward off ghosts to mark the end of fall and the beginning of winter, when Celts believed the spirits of ancestors could walk among the living. To honor the ancestors and protect themselves from mischievous tricksters, celebrants offer food and drink to the ancestors and offer them a seat at the feast. Give a treat and we won't play a trick on you. That's where the trick or treat comes from. Shinto rites from Japan are believed in many households where they both believe in Buddhism and Shintoism, which revolves around gods or spirits believed to inhabit everything on earth. I participated in a ritual. It was a 3-hour solemn train ride from Tokyo to a Buddhist island one really hot summer day. We had to climb hundreds of stone steps carved into the mountain. Some old people were going up on their knees like pilgrims on a pilgrimage. I took the $12 elevator ride up the middle of the mountain. This was before I had heart surgery. When I got to the top, I entered the giant room with huge wide open windows and hundreds of people seated yoga style. After buying a blank piece of wood like a ruler for each thing in my life I wanted to release symbolically, I joined the people on the floor. The monks paraded in wearing their saffron robes. The chief one climbed a ladder to sit on, something like a lifeguard's chair. Everyone started chanting a particular phrase, repeating it for hours until the ritual ended. The monks lit a fire, and everyone in turn circled the room and in front of the fire as the chief threw sticks we wrote on into the flames. The fire got bigger and bigger. The room got smokier. Each time we walked around, the flame was louder and louder. We were supposed to get as close as we could. It felt like a Native American sweat lodge. The closer to the flame, the bigger the blessing. I got really close. That ritual was intense and so hot. When it ended, I basically ran down the mountain steps feeling very light and unburdened. Plus downhill was easier on my heart. We stopped for a snow cone. It was like a thank you from the ancestors to cool us off. On to another country. Paganito from the Philippines. In the ancient Filipino religion, spirits inhabit every part of the world. The Anito are the spirits of the ancestors, and they influence events in the lives of the living. The Paganito ceremony is like a spiritual seance, with a shaman communicating with the spirits. In Chisiuk from North and South Korea, it's similar to our Thanksgiving. It's a harvest festival celebrating a bountiful autumn season. But different from Thanksgiving, it's dedicated to thanking the ancestors for the plentiful harvest. A ritual involves laying out food and lighting incense for the departed relatives. Families also visit and clean out the graves of their ancestors as a way of saying thanks. Calan Gaeaf from Wales is the first day of winter and believed that the spirits of the ancestors can walk amongst the living. People in Wales traditionally avoid locations in churchyards where the spirits are likely hanging out. The traditional way to avoid an encounter with the mischievous spirits is by writing your name on a rock and placing it near a fire. We often think of ancestor worship as something in the past, but ancestor worship is still alive and well today. Embalming and entombing the dead, as well as occasions like Memorial Day, are forms of ancestor worship, centering on a belief that the soul continues to exist after death. Why worship ancestors? They laid the groundwork for us, genetically, geographically, culturally, spiritually, and emotionally. We owe them everything. In this melting pot nation, we owe our ancestors for the very ground we walk on, and we worship them by combining the best of all worlds. We like foods from all the old countries. Why not celebrate, honor, and worship the ancestors from all the old countries? And here's a thought. Someday you'll be one of these ancestors. Not soon, though, I hope. We are consumed with being serious. The ancestors are reminding us to lighten up, even at their expense. Enjoy a bit of respectful fun. Happy Halloween. Happy Day of the Dead. Trick or treat. Thank you.